Miss Mary Kate Ridgeway, and I've chosen her as my leadership legacy story for today. And we're going to go ahead and get started. First thing I'd like to know is, do you remember an event that happened in your youth that had a major impact on your life?
Well, I do. Lots of times people say, well, do you have mentors in your life, or do you have things? Actually, when I was in high school, my goal was to be a math teacher. And I'd always loved math, and I always thought that was going to be just the thing I wanted to do. Of course, when I was in high school, everyone also took home economics, which is today family and consumer sciences. I didn't really want to take that because it wasn't going to be something that I was going to really do, but I had such a wonderful high school home economics teacher that I decided, well, I'm going to take that the second year. I loved her, and she was a very challenging person. She was a person who, as opposed to saying, well, this is what we're going to do today, she would have said, this is what we're going to do this week, and this is how hard you can work, and this is what you can do for an A, and this is what I expect. And, after a while you learn whether some people are project people or whether they want to work long-term or short-term. And I figured out that I was a project person and that working long-term did not really bother me. So I have to say that probably had a big impact in what I'm doing today and what I've always done.
But it is.
Louise Tilson was my high school home economics teacher. She was a very avid mentor. She followed my career always. She became not just my mentor but my friend. She later was very involved with the Tennessee Education Association and became their state president. So I can see where she had much leadership ability. She taught some of that to us as students, and then in her personal and professional life, she used some of those skills.
It was almost
to help
automatic.
others. It was.
Wow. If you could leave one message to future generations, what would it be?
Probably volunteerism. I've spent a lot of time through UT Extension working with volunteers in my community, and I know how valuable they are. I've heard people in Henry County say, well, Henry County is the volunteer county of the volunteer state. And there are stories that go back to other centuries that actually say how many people went from Henry County to serve in the war or do other different things. I think that probably, I would say, is the biggest thing and one of the biggest challenges we have in future generations. Not that children are not necessarily led toward volunteerism, but it is something that people learn. It is a catching spirit. Mm-hmm. It is something that affords some people an opportunity to develop their leadership, but more importantly, everyone gains when you have good volunteers. And most of the time I say, now I've been doing some programs for retirees, and I say, and I'm able to document that with research, that people who volunteer are healthier, they're happier, their mental health is better, and most importantly, what they gain back from it is so important, not just for their own personal health, but what they have done for others.
And you do a lot of volunteer work here in the county.
I do a lot of volunteer things. I'm real involved in the Helping Hand organization in Henry County. We don't think there's anybody else like us in the world.
There's not.
Just recently, thanks to the Helping Hand Board, over 200 volunteers that work 42 days during the months of January and February, and that doesn't include another probably 175 community chairs that are the people who bring those in. We were able to raise over $263,000, and then we were able to give away in April $263,000 to 74 organizations locally. So
That's
all
wonderful.
of that money stays in Henry County. It benefits Henry County folks. It helps nonprofit groups, everything from fire departments to ball groups to senior citizen groups to food bank groups to health and human services types of groups, things like the Lifeline Blood Program or we have 2 lifelines, so I can say that, through our hospital. Seniors that have the lifeline things on there,
Right.
actually that they wear around their neck, if they should feel dizzy or if they fall or something, they can call that. So for needy folks, that's one of the groups that also benefits.
That's real good. As you look back, what do you wish that you had accomplished in your life that you haven't so far, that you'd like to from this point forward?
Oh, me, that's a tough question.
For you, especially, because you're
there's
real
a lot of
active.
there's a lot of things that I really would like to do, and probably I'd say if I have any regrets, and that may not be exactly how that question is worded, but if I have any regrets, it might be that some of the things that I have gotten to do, that I had done them sooner. I would say to folks who are thinking that they might need to improve their leadership skills would be a thing. I'd heard about the Weststar Leadership Program for years. I just never had enrolled. And so finally I was in the class of 2001. But if I had it to do over, I'd probably try to go and do that 10 years sooner.
It's a really good program. It really is.
It is a wonderful program.
How do you want to be remembered in the community?
Oh, I think I want to be remembered as somebody that's positive. I think that in today's society, we turn on the television or we pick up something and look at a Facebook, and not everything is positive. And yes, there are always going to be some negatives, but we don't hear about those very much.
That's right.
And the positive stories are those that don't make the front pages of the newspaper, and that they don't make the lead story in whatever your nightly news is. I think that a lot more can be achieved with positive influences, and whether that's through volunteerism, whether that's through teaching, whether that's through being a helping hand to a farm family in our community, or setting some lofty goals for a 4-H program. I just think that probably a lot more can be achieved if people attack it with a positive approach.
And you've definitely got that. As long as I've ever known you, you've always been positive with everything. Before we go on to the business side, tell me a little bit about what you do, because I didn't hit that on the first side. What do you do on a daily basis?
On a daily basis. Well, I work for the University of Tennessee Extension. I've been in Henry County right at 40 years now. There are not a lot of extension folks that stay in the same county. I wouldn't say that there's not a county I wouldn't work in, but I've always been so proud to work in this county and been so lucky to get to do that. For 25 years I was the 4-H agent. For the last 15 I've been the adult, family, and consumer science agent, and then the last 3 years I've been the county director. I've always had a lot of administrative responsibilities. I've been real active in associations that are related to that. What I do on a daily basis is different every day, and that's probably one of the reasons I like this job so much. Let's see, today I'm going to be going to one of the elementary schools, getting teachers to sign our in-kind forms for a grant that we have, and people that know about grants know you have to have in-kind. So I need to get a little paperwork done. Yesterday I wrote a news article for the newspaper. I really intended to write that news article on my Volunteers of the Year for Family and Community Education Clubs. But I had seen somebody over the weekend who said, several years ago you came and did a program on the bucket program. And I said, that's not the bucket list. It is a bucket list, but not the same thing. And it was all about being prepared for emergencies. Well, we have definitely had our share of emergencies, and are probably going to have some more. The floodwaters, power outages, tornadoes, bad windstorms. But basically, in the last 2 weeks, we've had it. So I changed my story, so to speak, and that'll appear in the weekly newspaper. So every week I do try to do some type of news article, and it may be recognizing volunteers or recognizing people for things they've done, but it may also be an educational article that's trying to encourage people to put together a bucket that has things that they might need in case of emergencies,
Mm-hmm.
like copies of their prescriptions in plastic bags,
Yeah.
like 3 days of actual prescription medication that you must have
Mm-hmm.
if you are taking medication, a flashlight, extra batteries, a blanket, Band-Aids, some snacks, 3 gallons of water for 3 days for each person. Now that ends up being a lot of water, but if I'm stuck in my house, I cannot get out,
Yeah.
I have no options, I'm going to need 3 gallons of water a day.
Right. Wow.
So
Okay.
that's one day. That's just one day. Probably the program I'm the happiest with and I've been the most proud of is the Miss Healthy Comes to School program. We started that about 8 years ago. At that time, we got a grant through the Delta Regional Group to help us out, and they did that for 2 years, and that was a big help. We started this program in first grade, trying to teach children healthy habits, everything from washing their hands to eating more fruits and vegetables. With the Childhood Obesity Initiative, we've expanded the program, and our funding dried up. We were kind of concerned about that. But I just decided, the one set of folks that I can always depend on are local people because it's going back into their school systems. So I have local sponsors that sponsor that program. I have 2 other Miss Healthies who help me because now we're doing first grade through 4th grade, 3 sessions in each classroom. That's about 1,200 children. Just the scheduling alone takes us, because of missing the schedules in schools and whatever. We're really excited about it this year. We've expanded to 4th grade. We're dealing entirely with taking care of your bodily organs and why your organs are so important because you most of the time got one set and how that affects a lot of people in our area who are diabetic.
Oh,
A
yes.
lot of children do not understand what diabetes is, if they could possibly get diabetes. So we're doing a lot of that, and we're expanding to 4th grade in our county school system this year.
And that's real good for this area because there is
Yes.
a lot of diabetes in this area. Okay, let's go on to business and describe your philosophy on business.
Well, I think that business is all about service. I think it's all about being able to help people. If you're not able to help people, then your business is probably not going to do very well. I've always worked in a university setting. What we pride ourselves in is providing research-based information to our clients. So when somebody comes in, whether they're wanting to have their pressure canner lid checked or whether they're wanting to have a soil sample checked, all of those are done, and the recommendations that we make are research-based. So somebody doesn't have to worry about going on the internet, for example, and typing in something and maybe getting a research-based answer back and maybe not.
Right.
And I think that's what a lot of people don't really realize is talking to reliable folks is an important thing. It may not be so important if you're just planting 2 tomato plants and you want to use somebody's home remedy for how to keep cutworms off of them. But if you're planting 100 or if you're planting 200, you probably want to talk to somebody that's got the research-based information
That's
on that.
exactly right. That's exactly right. Describe the changes you've seen in your company or in just the extension service over your career.
Well, I can remember coming to work for UT Extension and being the 4-H lady, as people say, and going to the last 2-room school in this county. The Van Dyke School was not very far out here. In the first room was 1st, 2nd, and 3rd grade, and there was 1 teacher. And in the second room was 4th, 5th, and 6th, and that was the room that we were going to because 4th graders start 4-H. Those children did not have band. They did not have a coach. They did not have an art teacher. They had their teacher. A lot of sharp people have come out of that school.
Oh, yeah.
But what I remember most is how excited those children were about having visitors to come to their building. And after we went a few times, they said, "Why don't you come and eat lunch with us?" And it was a big treat for them, for us to come and eat lunch with them. And that has changed tremendously. We have children today that are studying Chinese with Chinese students in China through distance learning in classrooms. Not every classroom, but some classrooms. When I go into a classroom now, It's not just me, and I don't have, I used to pride myself in having great posters to do demonstrations for 4-H. Now I do all my demonstrations on PowerPoints or whiteboards or interactive type things. A lot of our school systems have interactive keyboard type things that I can actually do a program, and those children can see me doing something, and then they can turn around and do the same thing. So technology has probably been one of the biggest things. I can remember when I had a typewriter, not on my desk, but on my secretary's desk. I can remember when we got the first computer. Now, we didn't all get a computer. Our secretary got a computer, and every morning she typed off or ran off the emails that came and gave everybody their copy. I really wonder myself what I would do without my computer today, and how much I feel like I can get done. Now, I'm sure there's some things that I don't get done, but, I don't, I get a lot more calls. I still receive calls on the phone. People asking about, last week it was questions about what to do about their freezer because their power had been off at that point 36 hours. What do I need to do? And, just for anybody listening, if your power goes off, don't be going in and getting you a drink of water out of the refrigerator. And don't open the freezer.
Yeah.
You've got a chance at your power coming on before you're going to lose a lot of food. Yes, we had a lot of people who lost refrigerator food last week.
Right.
But some people were able to get power back on before their freezer food was bad.
Mm-hmm.
So, that sort of, I got several questions last week over the internet from people that said, I have internet service, I don't have phone. So, our mode of teaching is different. We still are involved in a lot of community activities, boards, groups that are trying to work as teams. I think I see a lot more of that than I used to see. Just in years ago, you would have one group that would be trying to do something.
Right.
Today, you see maybe 3 groups coming together to work on a project for something. I think that's the biggest positive for small communities, especially.
It really is. And we see that in our own work. We're all, more communities come together and we can get so much more done. That's exactly right. Have you seen or experienced over your professional life anything that has had an impact on your business life?
Well, I would say my opportunities through Extension have had a lot to do with maybe how I conduct business every day. Whether it's I've been in Institute of Agriculture Leadership Schools. I actually applied for some grants, and today I do the Real Colors program as a trainer. I love teaching leadership skills. I've always loved teaching leadership and citizenship skills to 4-Hers. Now I'm doing a lot of that for adults. So I think there are more people who would like to improve their leadership skills. They're not exactly sure where to go. I think that's something that has probably changed some of the things that I've done. I feel like that it not only has improved my leadership skills, but it has improved the ability that I have as an educator to go out and help others learn more about their styles of leadership.
Mm-hmm. I think that's something that I've really learned through Weststar a lot is the leadership part of it, and that there is a skill in that. How about a funny story? There has to be something with the 4-H or...
Oh, I have lots of funny stories. I guess probably one of my favorite ones is that a lady called here one day and she had moved from the north to our southern area. And she said, I'm wanting to make feather pillows. And I have my feathers, and I wanted to know how many feathers it took to make a pillow. And I said, well, how thick do you want the pillow? And I tried to get that across. But she thought it was a recipe, because I guess when she moved to the south, she had found out that if you make good cornbread, you got a recipe, and here's your recipe. And she thought there was a recipe for putting feathers in feather pillows. And I thought, well, now, I just can't help somebody that thinks you've got to have a recipe for everything.
I bet you get some really wild telephone calls, because we do. Because being with USDA, we used to get them all the time that would say, I remember one myself was a lady who called and said she had a polecat in her house and needed to know how to get rid of it. And it was evidently running through her attic when she was on the phone with me. And it was real hard a lot of times not to laugh.
Mm-hmm.
She was so serious. But it's real hard not to laugh when you get these questions, because they're calling you for help. And it's a really legitimate question.
Oh, yes.
But it's the way that it comes across is just, it's humorous at the time, so.
Well, we get lots of different kinds of questions. I anticipate after all the flood water, we'll get a lot of questions about mold.
Mm-hmm.
We'll also probably get a lot of questions about soil amendments that people are going to need to make for gardens if they don't already have it washed completely away.
Yeah.
There are a lot of questions like that, but I can't think of any exactly. I think probably some of my fondest memories are of taking 4-H'ers on trips, or taking them to do judging teams, or taking them to camp.
Mm-hmm.
And we're really known for camping in Tennessee. And unfortunately, we lost our 4-H center in Milan to budget cuts a couple of years ago. So our 4-H'ers in Henry County travel about 2 hours and 15 minutes to Columbia now to use that facility. So we're hoping that in the future that there's going to be some changes, and maybe some folks will help us a little bit, and we'll be able to have a center back in the western
So that would
area,
be nice.
West
That really
Tennessee
would.
area.
Let's move on to community then. A little bit, describe some changes that you've experienced in our community since you've been here. I think before we come on camera, you told me that you're not an actual Paris girl.
No.
So tell me a little bit about the changes that you've experienced in the community since you came to Paris.
Well, I'm actually from Obion County. I grew up in Union City. I lived away from there a couple of years when I was in elementary school. Graduated from Union City High School. I'm a graduate of UT Martin in the Family and Consumer Science Education program. I always aspired to be a high school home economics teacher. Extension's a whole lot like that. I've actually had probably a lot more opportunities through Extension and a wider range of teaching areas. I've always wanted to be a teacher. I met my husband at UT Martin. Don is a native Henry Countian. He's probably never wanted to live any place but Henry County. So after we got married and after we graduated from college, both of us applied for jobs in this county, and we came back to Paris. Having grown up in Union City, I thought that was probably the greatest place I had ever been and lived. When I moved to Paris, I thought, well, this is not quite as nice. I was not sure that it was as great a community. I'm not sure today, after having lived here nearly 40 years, that it's probably not a greater community. The resources are different, and you see that in each one of them, but both of them do have one central town. And I think that has a lot to do with a community our size. Henry County's grown a little bit. We're about 32,000 in size now. The town of Paris is almost 10,000. That hasn't changed a lot, but of course they've not annexed a lot of areas, so there are a lot of folks that are living within spitting distance, so to speak, of the city line. I think the one thing that I've noticed about our community is that we have experienced a large number of retirees who have come to our community. So that has changed our base of people somewhat. Like other rural communities, we've lost a lot of industry. So as far as jobs are concerned, our job area has not grown as much. The fact that a lot of these folks have decided to retire in our area means that we have some things to offer. And they didn't just choose to come here because of fishing, for example. They've chosen it because we have 4 seasons. They've chosen it because of the size of the community, the location to an interstate, the location to Jackson or Paducah or Clarksville. I mean, we're 60, 65 miles from any of those. They've chosen it because it is near the lake. It is near a golfing area. So there are some things that I have seen as far as that is concerned. Hopefully, we are beginning to continue to build that volunteer base.
That's what I was going to say. I think that's something that's really big around here. That is
a lot of people do not realize, and I did not realize that when I moved to this community, that there's a spirit in Henry County that's not in every community. It's a very giving, volunteering, want to see the community prosper type thing. I realized that several years ago when I would try to recruit people to go to 4-H camp. Now, not every parent wants to go to 4-H camp. I would have people, teachers that taught every day, people that had been a 4-H'er that would say, now if you ever need a leader, I'll be glad to go with you. And I would have other people when I'd go to meetings in Jackson or something that would say, well, how do you get all those people to come? So, well, you have to ask them. And you have to make it sound like it's going to be a fun week. I mean, nobody wants to come to something that's drudgery. There is something special about this community. And my husband and I talk about it a lot. And I don't know that anybody's ever done a study of that, of why that seems to be. There are a couple of things that I think about. One of those is E.W. Grove establishing the E.W. Grove High School here. And even though today they do receive some funding from that, it's not a tremendous amount of money. But he invented Grove's Chill Tonic, and he left money to the school system. So there were a lot of people that probably received a little better education in this community than in some other communities around here because of that funding. I don't know if that has anything to do with it, if education has anything to do with it, but truly in Henry County what we hope is that volunteering is catchy.
Exactly.
If somebody moves in on your street and they see that you're, it's kind of the thing of like the Joneses, if somebody lives next door to you that keeps their front yard really nice, it kind of behooves you to try to do the same thing. And you hope that that catches on down the street. The same thing's true of people that I see that are volunteering for Helping Hands, that are volunteering for the blood program, or whatever it happens to be. Those people have heard about it from somebody at church, they've heard about it from somebody at the grocery store or whatever, and said, you ought to come out and help us. We're going to be planting tomato plants for whatever it is. Not everybody's going to do that, but there's something that everybody can do.
My daughter got caught on to Helping Hands by listening to it on the radio.
Yes.
And for someone like herself that is not used to being involved in it, she was really interested and wanted to know a lot more about it, and was even interested in bidding herself at the time. And I can see where that could really catch on, because even if you're not in the community, you can pick up the phone and make a call and don't have to be right there at the place. So I can see where that is a really good catching on,
yes,
to a lot of different generations.
And different generations of people. A great example is we have two ladies in our community. They're both retired. They live in the Buchanan area. And Miss Priscilla Martin and her sister. And they can't come to Helping Hands every day. They're concerned that the weather's not going to be good, and they don't need to be on the road if we have bad weather. And so, but they want to help, and one of them doesn't walk very well. And so we have tickets, 10 to 11,000 tickets. That's how many items we run through the auction. So those ladies spend, starting sometime in the fall, on bad weather days, numbering all the tickets with large magic marker numbers. And they bring them to the auction then, about 2,000 at a time. Now that's one job. Two people doing it. They do it while they're watching TV, while they're drinking coffee, whenever they want to do it. But if they didn't do that job, I don't know who would pick it up.
Right,
somebody
huge.
would pick it up. But they realized that that was something they could do.
Right.
We have some men who say, well, I don't write well enough to be able to write those tickets for people to be able to read that on the radio. Those people come at 7 o'clock in the morning. Now, this will not be the job that I will be really good at. I would prefer to do the writing or come a little later. They come by 7 o'clock, if not before. Yes, they've got a coffee pot there, but as soon as you pull up, if you're on your way to work or to school or wherever, they're out there with a rolling cart or something to help you unload all of your items. And then they're finished by 9 o'clock or so. But they do it every day, some of them do. So they're given 40 days out of their year, 2 hours a day, but it's something that they can do and they feel like they've been a part of. And then, of course, they're going to listen on the auction or they're going to come back that afternoon.
Right.
You know, we have a world of volunteer types of things in our community. We have probably one of the best groups of folks who read to children at schools. We have a lot of people that volunteer through Family Resource Center. We have a lot of folks that volunteer at preschools. You know, everybody has something that they're good at or that they enjoy,
Right.
that they could give back. And, you know, a volunteer today, I think, is $19.50. Their worth is clocked at $19.55.
That's wild.
That's a big amount. Now, I know there's a lot of volunteers. I have sometimes I'll say, well, you know, did you know that you're worth $19.55 on an in-kind chart? And I said, well, I don't make that much. And I said, well, but now you're paying your own gas, you're paying your own health insurance, and there's no benefits. And so when you clock all those things, but if every community in West Tennessee had a increase in their volunteer base in their community, it would be amazing.
That's
what
right.
those communities could do.
That's true. That's exactly right. One last thing is, what would you like to accomplish for the rest of your life?
Oh, I don't know. I'm going to spend a little more time with my grandchildren, and I have done that in the last year or so. I'm able to pick them up from school at some afternoons. They may not notice it, but I do.
Because you've actually retired and came back,
That's
right?
That's right. I actually, we had an opportunity through the university that some of us could retire and come back to work half-time. So that's what I actually do. And I've really enjoyed it because it's given me an opportunity to hone in on just some particular programs. The Miss Healthy Comes to School program. I still do the co-parenting program for parents that are going through divorces. That's a mandated program with minor children. I have some other health and safety programs that I actually work on. But it's given me an opportunity to just hone in on a specific amount of programs. I still plan to do the Miss Healthy Comes to School program just because I wrote the curriculum and I just feel very invested in that. We actually are looking at some options to expand that program. I think that probably I'm going to do a few more things around my house that I would like to do just because of that. But I think if there's anything, I hope to get to volunteer as much as I can. I've spent a lot of time recruiting volunteers. And one of the other things that I enjoy doing is I do some public speaking places. And so I have cards out now, and in fact, next week I'm doing a training for Real Colors for Head Start faculty. The week after that, I'm speaking at a leadership banquet over in Obion County. So I think lots of times that maybe, I don't know that I can make it as big as some of the big speakers on the speaker circuits, but I would really like to enjoy trying that.
Well, you do real well at that. I've heard you speak several times. Well, I want to thank you for letting me interview you, and it's been a joy for me. Is there anything that you would like to say before?
Well, I'd just like to say some really good things about the Weststar program. Since I've been through that program and I've seen some of the things that they've expanded, the Working Women's Conference, the African American Conference, and several others, Weststar is a growing program. It is a building program. I think that the most important thing is we are lucky to have something like that in our area. We are a rural area, but it doesn't mean that we can't do anything that a larger area could do. And lots of times, giving people some extra leadership skills is a real step in the right direction, I think.
Even a boost to their selves.
It's a boost personally. It's probably, I mean, I sometimes tell that the Weststar program was probably one of the best things I did for myself.
Exactly.
Because it opened my eyes to not just my community, but the entire western area of West Tennessee. Having grown up here all my life, I have a special feel for them. But, communities are changing.
Right.
And every community in our region doesn't have the same problems or
Not
the
at
same
all.
assets.
And I've noticed that when we have our meetings, that we can pick up where one community is really thriving somewhere, another one will say, well, why can't we do that there at our home? And that's really a good incentive for other people to go back and take those things back to their own community.
I think it is. I think communities today have got to look from within to do a lot of their building. They can't expect government to do that for them.
That's
They
right.
have got to look from within and say, these are what our assets are, these are our needs, and how do we match those two together.
I agree with you totally. Well, thank you again. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for
I
letting
really
me do this.
I really do.
I've enjoyed it.